Hi, I'm Whack.
Hi, and I'm Pat, and thanks for joining us for the first episode of 2024 of the Weekly Orbit. Whack, today's show is going to be a special one. We're going to preview some of the bullishness that we're expecting for 2024. And so
Yeah.
before we do that, how was your new year?
Yeah, it was good, thanks. It was I'm at that age now where my New Year's is like I'm asleep at midnight, so that's pretty much what it was. And yeah, but it was nice. It's good been a
You
good
missed
start
all
to
the fun.
2024. That was fun for me being asleep
Yeah.
on time.
Well,
Yeah.
it sounds better. Like I went to a little house party, just a few
Mhm.
friends, and we're watching Times Square, and
Yeah.
a friend, he pointed out, he's like, yeah, see all those people? They're wearing diapers. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, once you go in, you can't come out and you're going to stand there for hours. So a lot of people wear diapers apparently.
Yep.
And that doesn't sound too much like fun to
No.
me.
Because they queue up, I think, at 2 a.m. and then they're allowed into that area of Times Square at like 9 a.m. And that's like 24 hours basically that they don't go to the bathroom. So
I didn't realize they
it's no
start
fun.
queuing up that early.
Yeah, I think 24 hours earlier in some cases. And a lot of the people there are actually tourists. So yeah,
Oh
I
my
don't think
gosh.
any
Yeah.
self-respecting New Yorker would try to go to be in the front of that show. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing I was wondering is how come we just pick a random date like January 1st to start the year instead of an astronomically significant one like the winter solstice, December 21st. That would make more sense. But, I don't know how we came about picking January 1st. Why not
Yeah.
April 27th?
That's one of the things that I think about, like in terms of resolutions. Like every day can be the start of a new resolution. You don't have to wait until some set date. Every day can be that date. So yeah.
Right. Well, hopefully 2024 is going to be a great one. I feel like 2023 for crypto was a rebuilding year. We
Hmm.
had some the developers had their heads down building, and
And now we're going to reap that
the
fruit.
right and
Yeah.
the price recovered. We I think we started last year maybe around 1,200. I want to say if I'm not mistaken, and now we're up to 2,200 or so, 2,300. So looking forward, we're going to break this down from kind of big macro down to Ethereum down to Rocket Pool.
Hmm.
So one thing I want to talk about is, the big story of 2022 and 23 was inflation. As we see from this chart, monthly 12-month inflation rate is trending down as the Federal Reserve and other central banks would like to see. As of November 23, the U.S. Inflation rate was around 3.2%, I believe, and so that's a good trend. Doesn't mean it'll go on forever, but we're heading in the right direction. And then
Absolutely.
the Fed. This is an article from the New York Times from just yesterday, the 3rd of January. So officials feeling better about inflation. That's the sentiment from the Federal Reserve. One quote was here. Officials had previously expected to make one final quarter point move in 2023, which they ultimately skipped. Now Wall Street is focused on when they'll begin cutting interest rates and how quickly they'll bring them down. So it's right now the Fed rate's 5.25% to 5.5%, and investors think in 2024 that could fall to 3.25% to 4% by the end of 2024. So we'll see. At the very least, it seems like the rate hiking has been paused. So investors like that, tech companies especially like that, crypto along with it, because lower interest rates means easier borrowing and expansion. So, any thoughts
Yeah.
on inflation or the Federal
Absolutely.
Reserve pivot?
Yeah. So the idea is that the Fed has two tools to challenge inflation, right? Like they have the interest rates that they can target at 2% inflation to bring it to 2%, and they also have about unemployment to try to get that targeted as well. And they manipulate the interest rates, the short-term interest rates, to bring that into line where they want it. The problem is that there's this idea going around now that they might have stayed tight for too long, and that the impact of the higher rates will be felt this year, so much so that we might get like even more like lesser inflation, disinflationary like periods, so much so that it might cause some economic problems. And depending on what indicators you're looking at, either everything is amazing or everything is like on the verge of collapse. So no one really
Yeah.
knows what's going on. Like with the Fed themselves are saying that there might be three rate reductions in the coming year. Like in this article, it says that there's five potentially coming, but some, if you look at the Fed Watch tool, like there might be up to nine rate cuts that happen this year. So like there's a whole lot of uncertainty about what this year is going to look like, just where we're going to end up going. And I think those are going to be some really key issues that we have to consider about how things are going to look in the year's time. However, like you said, lower interest rates tends to mean a more risk on environment. And that means, investors are willing to take risks with their allocations and the assets they purchase. And crypto being one of the riskier ones means that hopefully, interest rate cuts will mean more money flows into crypto. So that's what we want to see.
Sure.
Yeah.
The other macro thing is 2024 is a election year for the president of the United States. Generally speaking, markets and at-risk assets tend to go up. It's not 100%, but if we look, this chart here is for VTI. It's a Vanguard Total Stock Market. So this goes back to 2002. 2002. So there was election in 2004. You can see we're in the green. 2008, it was a down year, but that was the
Great
financial
recession.
meltdown, if you remember. Okay, the next presidential election was 2012. Again, we're up 16%. Then, of course, 2016 up about 13%, and then 2020 up 21%. So, folks say, well, hey, generally stocks and that type of thing goes up in these election years. Generally, the stock market goes up more times than it goes down. So I'm not sure how much correlation. However, it's just one other factor to consider when we're talking macro stuff.
Yeah, it makes sense for the incumbent to do what they can to boost, stock market and people's money, just so they feel good about the politician who's in charge, so they can win another term, basically. So I wouldn't expect there to be any different this year.
Sure. Okay, now we're on to potential bullish stuff for Ethereum. Of course, we all know several Wall Street firms have filed for a spot Ethereum ETF. I believe the first date, that the SEC has to decide by is sometime in May of this year. Of course, BlackRock is the biggest of the fish who did that. We're recording this on January 4th, and it seems imminent that the BTC ETF will be approved, in the next few days or perhaps early next week or sooner. Who knows? So what this could be a nice way for inflows to come into the Ethereum, and that would have positive price impacts. How much and how quickly, we don't know. Do you have any thoughts on how a spot Ethereum ETF will impact markets?
Yeah, so taking a step back, the Bitcoin ETF will be approved likely tomorrow. We'll find out that, everything's got their approval, and then they'll be able to start trading next week. And it seems like there'll be a whole bunch of ETFs that will go live at the same time. Now, the thing about the Ethereum ETF is that once you've gone through all the paperwork and gotten everything ready for the Bitcoin one, it'll just be Control F and replace everywhere that's mentioned by Bitcoin and replace it with Ethereum, right? So all the issues and problems that the SEC has brought up during the Bitcoin cycle will likely be the same things that they want to see for the Ethereum one. And then by matching everything exactly, there should be no reason why the Ethereum ETF doesn't go through. So I'm very bullish on the Ethereum ETF being approved. The next step, however, is what will the inflows be like into the Ethereum ETF? Now, here
Mhm.
is where my perspective might be slightly contrary to others, is that I think people will be waiting for a staked Ethereum ETF. I think that's the main thing that's going to happen. And once you get a staked Ethereum ETF, that's where the inflows are going to go wild. With a spot Ethereum ETF, just a regular like ETH token, I think, it'll be good, but it won't be like mind blowing. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be like really keeping an eye on that one. Now, I think what might happen is as soon as the Bitcoin ETF is approved, these firms will start getting an idea of where the SEC stands with them on the Ethereum one. And once they start getting like green lights and like positive feedback, that's when they'll start working on their staked ETFs, and we should have those out in the next, I think like the applications should be going through in the next like 3 to 6 months, with the product being launched hopefully by the end of 2024. Now that would be really exciting, but also kind of worrying because it might be a huge centralizing force on Ethereum with taking big chunks of stake. So there's a lot of these question marks, but I think that's kind of like the timeline that I'm seeing, or what I think just from the information that I've gotten from all these other people. And I see no reason to doubt their predictions.
Gotcha.
Now,
I'll
can
take
you
the
imagine
contrary
if?
view.
Yeah,
I'll
go
say
ahead.
that I think it's going to be a while before, because that ETH, and BTC are very similar, and staked ETH is a whole nother animal. I think the SEC is going to put the brakes on that for a while.
Yeah, but
There's all
that
kinds of
yield though,
questions. And I know that.
that
Oh, I know that. I know
yield,
that I'm not saying
they
that the
want
applications
yield.
won't come in.
Yeah,
I just think that the Fed or the SEC is going to say, well, how's this going to work? Are you going to set up validators yourself, or are you going to use a third party? How is that going to work? Who's going to take custody? Yada, 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 all these questions.
yeah,
So I hope you're right, but I do worry about the centralization, because you start dumping that much money into staked ETH, and it might be a centralizing force. So, but
hugely. Yeah.
good
The thing
discussion.
that I was thinking is,
We'll keep an eye on that.
can you imagine if they use Rocket Pool as their staking software? So let's talk about that next.
Yeah,
There's a
that
lot
would
to
be
talk about
good.
with them.
Yeah, I think the SEC would be. Do you think they know the nuance between decentralization and centralization? They might worry about. Oh, wait, you're going to have this custody amongst thousands of node operators. We'd feel
Yeah.
much more comfortable with a big one like Coinbase or something like that, right?
Well, Coinbase already has too much share, and that's going to get scary really quickly. So,
Well, we think so, but the SEC, I don't think
yeah,
they worry about centralizing factors.
yeah,
That's not. Anyways, we'll keep an eye on that, because I think you're right. Eventually, Wall Street loves yield, and they're going to want to push for something that provides yield, because that's
yeah,
a nice marketing tool that you can use. Okay,
absolutely.
the next ETH catalyst, we got the Dencun upgrade coming probably in March. It's going to, there's several things in it, but 48 EIP 4844 is a big one. I think another successful upgrade is always good for the network. This is going to create a separate fee market for L2s. We're
Yeah,
expecting that it will reduce transactions down to pennies, if not less. That is expected to help developers develop new applications, perhaps things we haven't even thought of that could go mainstream and create real use cases. So
yeah,
this is, again, Ethereum's moving forward. It's slow and methodical, but they pump out an upgrade once every 9 to 12 months, it seems. And I think it's always a good thing when we push forward and make changes. So what are your thoughts on the upcoming Dencun upgrade?
yeah. There's proto sharding is definitely the headline EIP in this upgrade. It's going to make layer twos have independent fee market through blobs, and their cost is going to go down by 10 times, basically, like down to pennies, like you said, which is amazing. Thankfully, the IMC is already in a position where we're incentivizing our ETH use on layer twos, which I think is going to be a huge thing going forward. In fact, I think next few months potentially we'll start paying more for liquidity on layer twos as a whole compared to layer one, like 50% split basically between layer one and layer twos, all the layer twos,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even more later. But of course, you need that liquidity on layer one to be able to help keep the peg in place. But that's what my thought is. Going forward is like a whole lot of people are going to move on to layer twos, and that's what it's going to be wonderful for everyone like involved, because Ethereum is going to be fun and cheap to use again. Now, there's another EIP in Cancun, 4788, I think, which is Beacon State root. And that is going to be a really big deal for Rocket Pool, because it's going to help reduce in the medium term some ODAO duties. Also, it's going to make things easier for people like NodeSet, who we're going to be talking about later. But that's the one to look at. And then the following upgrade after that's going to have a whole lot of things to make staking better, which is really exciting as well. So that's going to be, I think, Electra coming
Yep.
at the end of the year.
And speaking of Electra, which is the next upgrade. So I'm projecting this going to be, given we're usually too optimistic about upgrades. So I'm going to say this will be Q1 2025. All right. That's my projection for the next upgrade after Dencun.
Yeah.
What's going to potentially be in it? So this is I think a catalyst for, we're kind of starting to get into more Rocket Pool stuff, staking in general. There's a EIP 7002, which is execution layer triggerable exits. And then the other one to keep an eye on is EIP 7251, increase the max effective balance. Why don't you, if you could tell us, Wack, explain to our listeners each of these EIPs and how they would impact Rocket Pool in a positive way.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the triggerable exits first, right? So say there's a node operator. Now the node operator starts behaving badly. We see that, they are trying to steal MEV or something along those kind of lines. We can just kick them out of the validator set. So as a protocol, when someone's acting badly, you can get rid of them, which is a huge stick, because we don't really have many sticks right now for bad acting node operators, misbehaving node operators. This will be a huge stick that we can use. Max effective balance helps the Ethereum network overall by potentially reducing the validator count by the 50 to 75%. So, we're at 900,000 validators right now. A whole lot of those validators are run by people who have multiple validators. They'll be able to consolidate those validators into one validator, which means with the beacon chain and with the Ethereum network itself, it would make it more communicative between the different validators that are running. It'll be the load on them will be less, so we can put more load onto them in response. So we could potentially get bigger blobs. We could potentially it would pave the way for execution layer sharding potentially, or some kind of optimization on the execution layer, which would be really good. And for Rocket Pool, we're not exactly sure what it might look like for Rocket Pool yet, but it could be that we change the way the mega pools work with this idea. So there's some other things as well that is not mentioned here, like max slash. So that's something that's been talked about, because right now, if there's correlated slashing, you could potentially get slashed to, I think, 32 ETH. Basically, if a Geth has a problem, everyone on Geth gets slashed, you could lose all your ETH. Whereas with a max slash EIP would mean, there would be a punishment limit set on how much ETH you would lose, whether that's 2 ETH or 4 ETH. A huge benefit of that for Rocket Pool would be being able to reduce the LEB requirements and mega pool requirements. So, we could potentially get down to LEB 4s quite easily with these changes. Maybe with mega pools, we could have the first validator be 8 ETH, then the second one be 4 ETH, and then after that 2 ETH for some of them, and then down to 1 ETH potentially, even if we get some of these changes in place. So for Rocket Pool, there's some really positive stuff that's going to come with this. I think this is going to be an upgrade that will kind of really ignite interest in staking again, because it will likely be quite a staking heavy upgrade, hard fork, and I'm really ready for that narrative to kind of catch for Rocket Pool. I think it's going to be a really big deal.
Yeah, and I think what'll happen, Wack, towards once Dencun goes through, we start to get in the second half of 2024, the narrative will start talking about staking again, right?
Yeah.
And that's been pulled off. That narrative has kind of shifted away from staking, like RPL and LDO, and it's been focusing on other things right now. People are thinking L2s.
Yeah,
That's the hot thing. And I think we're going to swing back around because people are going to see, hey, what's in the next upgrade? Oh, look at this. This is going to benefit Rocket Pool, and this will benefit Rocket Pool. And holy cow, that's going to really work well with mega pools. And so I think we're going to see that towards the second half of 2024.
absolutely.
All right, let's move on let's talk about NodeSet. Okay. I think this could potentially be a huge benefit for Rocket Pool. And I wanted to point out a comment here by Wanderer. Wanderer and Nick have been working heads down for about a year or two on NodeSet. They're expected to launch, I think, in Q1, towards the end, or early Q2, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And he responds to a comment here. Has anybody done analysis on estimations on how much NodeSet could scale? And Wanderer says infinitely. As long as RETH, XRETH, and XRPL have enough demand, Constellation will keep making mini pools. With Constellation, Justin Sun could dump 100,000 ETH into Rocket Pool just like he did with Lido, except he'd earn more. Okay, let's say that again. A whale could come in and dump thousands of ETH in, which they can't do to Rocket Pool right now because we got their deposit pools limited at 18,000. It's usually full. But someone could just come in and drop thousands of ETH and it'd be absorbed like a sponge, and they'd earn more than if they did it with Lido. Any thoughts?
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to be the stick in the mud a little bit here, and I agree that technically speaking, Wander is right. Yeah, but that as long as is doing a whole lot of work here, there's going to be market dynamics at play that are going to be issues. Like they're going to be real issues. Now, hopefully, they'll be able to fix up on their side and they'll have the flows working, which would be absolutely amazing. However, I think we should temper expectations a tiny little bit, because with Rocket Pool, right, there's two sides that need to be in balance for the protocol to grow. You need node operators coming online, and you need there to be RETH demand. So that's what you need for Rocket Pool to grow. With NodeSet here, with Constellation, their integration with Rocket Pool, just as one of the mentions here, there's three things that then need to be synced up. So there's RETH demand for Rocket Pool. Then there's also XRETH demand, that's people depositing ETH into NodeSet. And then there's XRPL demand, which is people depositing RPL into NodeSet. So those are the things that there's an additional level of things that need to be considered that isn't there with Rocket Pool. Now, there's the scope of them, ironing those out and smoothing those out, and there being the case that this will happen. Don't get me wrong, I'm insanely bullish on NodeSet too. I've been raving about them for quite a while. The thing is though, I think I kind of learned from past mistakes where now I'm kind of tempering expectations a little bit, because I'm a huge cheerleader and I love Wander and Nick. I know them personally, and I've talked to them many, many, many times, and I love the work that they're doing. But I think it should be responsible by saying that we have to see what's going to happen with those three areas now instead of just two areas. So we need to see how much RETH demand there is. We need to see if they're going to get ETH deposits. I think there's a whole lot of people waiting to deposit their RPL into NodeSet, but then the issue becomes who's going to deposit their ETH into NodeSet, and that's something that they're going to have to work on. And I don't know the details of that, but I'm hoping that they'll have some ETH lined up for a good start, because if they can build that momentum from the beginning, then I think they can really gain a lot of momentum after that as well. But I'm hoping that they do a great job. I'm hoping that Rocket Pool, they help themselves and Rocket Pool grow, because I think that would be wonderful for everyone.
You gotta be a stick in the mud. This is a bullish podcast here, okay?
Hey, did you listen to what I said though? The words that I said were really bullish. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
It's just. I think it's going to be really, really good for us all.
Yeah, one question I had was, and maybe this goes into more of the mechanics of NodeSet, is say some Justin Sun comes along, he puts in 100,000 ETH. Mm-hmm. You have to have a corresponding amount of RPL to stake with it.
Yeah.
So if you don't have, say you don't have I mean, I don't know the math, but say you don't have enough, say just for argument purposes, you need 1 million RPL to match up with that 100,000 ETH. Well, what happens if you only have 700,000 RPL laying around,
Then
and
you can't
therefore
stake it.
you
Yep.
couldn't stake all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Yep.
But in any event, I think NodeSet is exciting to
Yep.
watch. I think I expect the rollout to happen first half of this year, so we'll keep an eye
Yep.
on that. The other question about NodeSet is, hey, if I'm a node operator, how much am I going to get to participate in NodeSet and have the NodeSet use my machine and rent space essentially to run these mini pools? And here's some math in the Discord. So they estimate about maybe 0.06 ETH per mini pool. So if you had, say, you're running 10 of them for NodeSet, that would be zero 0.6 ETH, and you can do the math from there. So not a bad return for really doing no more work, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just installing the sidecar that, because Joe's working with them, I'm hoping will be a seamless integration into the smart node stack. It'll just be like an add-on that you can just add on basically to your smart node stack, and off it goes. You'll still use the same consensus and execution client, and like using one instance instead of like a new instance or a new node that you need or anything like that. And for the vast majority of us, we could run hundreds of validators without any issues. So it's going to be really, really easy to use, hopefully. And they've already got 150 node operators signed up now. So that's really exciting. And if they get, 10,000 validators, that would be really nice to start with, in the next 6 months or a year. If they can
Mm-hmm.
get more than that, I think that would be amazing.
Right. Yeah, because if you start off with 10 mini pools and then say it grows and now you have 20, you're not doing twice the amount of work as a node operator. You're
Mm-hmm.
just adding more on your machine. And as we said, these machines can run hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mini pools if needed. And
Yep.
so, yeah, it's for a node operator who's keeping an eye on their attestation rates and their efficiency. I think the standard's 95% or higher. This is just easy money. There's no
Yeah.
way
And
other way to say it.
one side effect of that as well is like it'll be nice for our ETH holders because you're getting the best performant node operators
Mm.
having more of the stake. So the inefficiency difference between Rocket Pool and say Lido or Coinbase, one of the big services, will start to go down as the more performant node operators are running more validators. I think that's going to be a huge boost for everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, and now on to Rocket Pool. What do we expect going forward? This is a post that was issued by the Rocket Pool team November 8th. We've seen this before. We've got two major upgrades coming. We got Houston, which is coming out hopefully by the end of the first quarter.
Mhm.
And then we speculate maybe Saturn 1 and 2. Saturn's the next following upgrade. And of course, these are going to make the protocol more efficient, more attractive, more lucrative, all that stuff. Why don't we just hit Houston first? I know we touched on this last week, but let's focus more on Saturn 1 and 2. So just a brief on Houston first.
Yeah, Houston's going to be two main things for Houston. The first one is going to make Rocket Pool more decentralized by bringing DAO voting on chain, and the second thing it's going to do is make some staking tweaks to make people like NodeSet and others who want to share stake a little bit easier by having separate ETH and RPL withdrawal addresses, by having stake ETH on behalf of features built into the staking system, as well as stake RPL that we already have. So these kind of things will make it a little bit easier for people like NodeSet to act in a slightly more trustless way. So this upgrade Houston and some of the stuff that's happening with NodeSet will kind of go hand in hand, which I'm really hoping will, capture some narrative attention in the next few months as people start to understand what's happening. But like you said, the main upgrades coming this year for Rocket Pool, the big ones for Rocket Pool specifically, are the Saturn 1 and 2 upgrades, which will likely be renamed at some point, or one will stay named as Saturn and will get a different name for the other one. It was supposed to originally be in one upgrade, but it seems like that's going to be broken into 2 upgrades now. I'm not sure what's going to go into each upgrade, but we can definitely talk about what the general idea of the contents of Saturn will be.
So let's talk about if we were to break it up into 1 and 2. I know on the 2 we're talking megapools because some of that is going to require some tweaks to the Ethereum protocol, which we were just talking about in Electra. What would be in maybe the Saturn 1?
So Saturn 1 will likely have some changes to some of the contracts that we've passed through the PDAO, but need smart contract changes to be included into the node. Now, let me give you a couple of examples of that. One of them is staking and making a new validator, even though you don't have 10% RPL. So that was a vote that passed. It kind of makes it easier to be anti-Sybil attack. And it just makes sense. Like the person still wouldn't get RPL rewards, but we're still bringing more stake online. That's fine as long as they bring that 10% of RPL at that moment with the ETH that they're bringing. So they'll still have to add some RPL, but not bring their whole validator above 10%. So that's one of the things. Another thing is RPIP 30 that recently passed. The tokenomics changes for how RPL rewards are distributed. That's going to be phased in through tree generation changes instead of through smart contract changes. However, the final phase of that will need a smart contract upgrade. So those are the kinds of things that the community's kind of wanted, but you need smart contract changes to bring them in. I think those are the kinds of things that we'll be getting in Saturn 1, maybe other things too. There might be the possibility of some form of like LEB4, but that I think likely won't happen because there's still question marks around, forced exits and all that kind of stuff. So Saturn 2 will happen likely in conjunction with the Electra upgrade. So that's kind of like the timing. It'll likely be like at the same time, like, matter of days or, a few weeks later, just to take advantage of the changes that are taking place in Electra to bring them into Rocket Pool. And that's where I think we will get like some of the tokenomics works that we're doing now as a community that will get included into Saturn 2. So that will include things like mega pools, that will include things like rework tokenomics for, staking without RPL potentially, other MEV protection tools, the stuff that the community is working on right now will likely be included in Saturn 2. So that's going to be a huge upgrade. And the fact that it is in line with Electra as well, the Ethereum upgrade, hopefully, like you were saying, will catch that narrative huge tailwind, and hopefully we can get the same kind of movement that we got around Atlas and Shanghai coming together. I think that's what we'll see, something along those kind of lines, like in terms of tailwinds for Rocket Pool, and I'm really, really excited about that.
Yeah, it says here they look at 2 different approaches for with probably the second Atlas upgrade. First approach to reduce ETH bond from 8 to 4. This requires more research to ensure it can be implemented safely. And then the second and pretty exciting approach is the new ETH flex bond. This would see a flexible amount of ETH required with a possible minimum of just 1 ETH required for a validator. Again, that's still in the early research phase. So we'll find out more, I think, obviously going through 2024 on it's kind of more specifics on the Saturn, but it's all bullish. And once we, I think combine, we're looking at probably good macro with interest rates, the Fed pivot. We got Ethereum, EIP 4844 and that Dencun upgrade. We're going to be then talking about Electra towards second half. And then Rocket Pool. We got Houston. We've got Saturn. So what does that all mean? That means I'm going to make a prediction. Whack, you ready?
Okay, let me hit it.
2024. Okay, so by the end of so we're looking at what's the price of ETH going to be in December 31st, 2024. I'm going to say $6,600. I'm going
Okay.
to say the ratio is going to be 0.017,
Okay.
and the price of the price of RPO will be $112. So that's what I'm thinking by the end of 2024.
Hmm.
It's a little more conservative based on some other people's predictions, but hey, we can climb Mount Everest, one foot at a time. I think we're going to get up halfway there, I think, by the end of this year.
Yeah, a little bit like clarity on some of the points that I said last week. I think the all-time high for RPL in terms of ETH will, well, sorry, not the all-time high potentially, but the high of the next period of like up to the leading between now and the peak of the bull run will happen around Saturn 2, potentially whatever it might be called, and Electra kind of happening in conjunction in that period. I think that's when we're going to get that mania phase again for Rocket Pool, and I'm hoping that it's around 0.025. Hopefully, there's
Mm-hmm.
arguments to be made for it to potentially be higher than that. If we have a good year with NodeSet, capturing a lot of attention and market inflows, and Saturn One goes through without a hitch, it could be the case that we've built a really good platform going into that upgrade that we hopefully see
Right.
something even better. So I'm still sticking with 0.025, but I think that hopefully that might end up being kind of conservative. But the timing for that won't be on December 31st necessarily. It'll be
Right.
in that period when we get Saturn 2 and Electra happening, and whether that's right at the end of 2024 or whether that's more likely to be at the beginning of 2025, like a year from now, basically. That's kind of the period that I'm aiming for, and yeah, that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. Assuming there's no black swans that come along in 2024, everything is looking good. I remember
Yep.
this time last year, you're thinking, what is 2023 going to bring us? And you're like, well, I think we're going to be recovering. This is an accumulation year, that type of sentiment. This year, the narrative is just all positive. It seems we just went over it. We spent 37 minutes talking about all the good stuff happening. So I'm positive. I think we'll 3x on ETH from here, and RPL is going to have a resurgence, especially towards when we start talking about mega pools and Saturn. So to
Nice.
all our listeners, thanks for watching. Stick with us this year. We're going to be covering all this exciting stuff, and our bullishness will
Yep.
hopefully reap us all rewards. But thanks. We'll see you next week. And Whack, I hope you're right about 0.025.
Yeah, I think that might end up being conservative, so I hope so. And remember, this is not a trading or financial advice.
That's right. It's not financial advice. There's two
No.
guys just talking crypto. Don't follow anything I just said. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
Thanks,
hopefully I'm
Pat.
wrong, and it's ETH is 10,000 by the end of the year. So
Yep.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.